James Mitchell had served as a royal guard at Buckingham Palace for 12 years. His dedication was unquestionable, his record spotless, and his loyalty to the crown absolute. Standing at 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and a perfectly maintained uniform, he commanded respect wherever he went. The red tunic, black trousers, and iconic bearskin hat were symbols of honor that few people in Britain could wear with such pride. On this particular Tuesday evening in November, James was off duty and had decided to celebrate his wedding anniversary with his wife, Sarah. They had been married for 10 years, and despite his demanding schedule, James always made sure to mark this special day. Sarah had been patient through countless missed dinners, canceled plans, and holidays spent on duty. She deserved something special. James had saved for months to book a table at Le Petit Chateau, one of London's most exclusive restaurants. Located in the heart of Mayfair, the restaurant was known for serving royalty, celebrities, and the ultra-wealthy. The waiting list was typically 3 months long, but James had managed to secure a reservation through a friend who worked in hospitality. The evening was meant to be perfect. He had chosen his finest civilian clothes, a navy blue suit that Sarah had bought him for Christmas, polished leather shoes, and a silk tie. James wanted to look his best for the woman who had stood by him through his entire career. Sarah wore her favorite emerald dress, the one that brought out the color of her eyes. They both felt excited and slightly nervous about dining at such a prestigious establishment. The restaurant's exterior was understated, but elegant, with a simple brass nameplate and burgundy awnings. A doorman in white gloves stood at the entrance, greeting guests with practiced courtesy. James and Sarah approached confidently, expecting the same warm welcome that other patrons received. The doorman looked them up and down, his expression shifting from professional politeness to barely concealed disdain. James announced their reservation clearly and politely. He had double-checked the booking that morning and knew they were expected. However, the doorman's response was cold and dismissive. Without even consulting the reservation book, he claimed there was no record of their booking. Sarah squeezed James's hand, sensing the tension building in the situation. The couple waited patiently while the doorman made a show of flipping through pages, clearly buying time. Other guests arrived and were immediately welcomed inside, some without reservations, but with the right connections or appearance. James began to realize what was happening, but he maintained his composure, drawing on years of military discipline. When the restaurant manager appeared, James explained the situation calmly. He showed his confirmation email and provided all the details of his reservation. The manager, a thin man with a superior attitude, barely glanced at the evidence before declaring that their table had been given away due to their late arrival, even though they were actually 5 minutes early. Sarah's disappointment was visible, but James remained steady. He had faced far more challenging situations in his role as a royal guard. However, the manager's final comment cut deep. "Perhaps you would be more comfortable at one of the establishments down the street that cater to people of your background." The implication was clear and insulting. James felt his wife's hand tremble in his. This was supposed to be their special night, and instead, they were being turned away based on assumptions about their social status. The other patrons in the restaurant's foyer watched the scene unfold, some with curiosity, others with the smug satisfaction of witnessing someone being put in their place. James maintained his dignity as he and Sarah walked away from Le Petit Chateau. His training had taught him to remain calm under pressure, but inside, he felt a mixture of anger and humiliation. Sarah was quiet, trying not to show how hurt she was by the treatment they had received. This was not how either of them had imagined their anniversary celebration would begin. They found themselves standing on the busy London street, watching other couples enter the restaurant they had been denied access to. The contrast was stark. While they had been dressed appropriately and had a confirmed reservation, they were judged unworthy based on preconceived notions about their background and social standing. Sarah suggested they find another restaurant, but James could see the disappointment in her eyes. She had been looking forward to this evening for weeks, and he had promised her something special. The rejection stung more because of what it represented. Despite his years of service to the crown and his impeccable reputation, he was still seen as beneath certain members of society. As they walked down the street, James made a decision that would change everything. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. Colonel Richard Hampton was his commanding officer and had served as a mentor throughout his career. More importantly, Colonel Hampton had direct access to the palace administration and understood the significance of maintaining the dignity of those who served the royal family. James hesitated for a moment before dialing. He had never used his position for personal gain, and calling his superior about a restaurant incident felt inappropriate. However, this was not about getting special treatment. It was about being treated with basic respect and fairness. He had earned the right to dine wherever he chose through his years of dedicated service. Colonel Hampton answered on the second ring. His voice was warm and familiar, immediately putting James at ease. James explained the situation carefully, emphasizing that he was not seeking revenge but simply wanted the restaurant to understand who they had turned away. He mentioned Sarah's disappointment and how this was meant to be a celebration of their anniversary. The colonel listened without interruption, his anger growing with each detail. He knew James personally and was aware of his exemplary service record. The idea that one of his best guards had been treated with such disrespect was unacceptable. Colonel Hampton had dined at Le Petit Chateau himself on several occasions and knew the owner personally. After James finished his account, Colonel Hampton was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was measured but firm. He assured James that the situation would be addressed, but not in the way either of them expected. Instead of calling the restaurant directly, Colonel Hampton said he would need to make this matter known to higher authorities within the palace structure. The conversation ended with Colonel Hampton asking James and Sarah to return home for the evening. He promised that their anniversary celebration was not over and that they would have an opportunity to dine at Le Petit Chateau under very different circumstances. James was puzzled by the cryptic response but trusted his commanding officer's judgment. As they rode the bus home, Sarah asked what Colonel Hampton had meant by his promise. James could only shake his head, uncertain about what would happen next. He had expected perhaps a phone call to the restaurant or a complaint to management, but the colonel's response suggested something far more significant was about to unfold. That night, as they shared a simple dinner at home, neither James nor Sarah could have imagined that their story was just beginning. The rejection they had experienced would soon become the catalyst for an event that would make headlines across Britain and beyond. The next morning, James reported for duty at Buckingham Palace as usual. His shift began at 6 a.m, and he had learned to compartmentalize personal issues when wearing the uniform. The incident at the restaurant felt like something from another world as he took his position at the palace gates, greeting tourists and maintaining security with his characteristic professionalism. However, Colonel Hampton had not forgotten about the previous evening's conversation. At precisely 9 o'clock, he was sitting in the office of Sir Michael Stevens, the keeper of the Privy Purse and one of the most senior officials in the royal household. The colonel had requested an urgent meeting, and Sir Michael had agreed. Immediately upon hearing it concerned the treatment of palace staff. Colonel Hampton recounted James's experience with careful attention to detail. Sir Michael listened with growing concern and anger. The royal household took great pride in the caliber of individuals who served the crown, and any disrespect shown to these dedicated servants was considered an affront to the monarchy itself. James Mitchell was not just any guard. His file showed commendations for exceptional service, including a personal thank you letter from the Queen for his handling of a security incident 2 years earlier. Sir Michael understood that this was not merely about one man's disappointing evening. It represented a broader issue of how the public perceived and treated those who served the royal family. The reputation of the palace and its staff was something that had been carefully cultivated over generations, and incidents like this could not be allowed to pass without consequence. After Colonel Hampton left his office, Sir Michael made a decision that would surprise everyone involved. Instead of delegating the matter to a junior staff member, he personally picked up the phone and dialed the private number for Le Petit Chateau. The call was answered by Marcus Whitfield, the restaurant's owner and head chef, who had built his reputation serving London's elite over the past 15 years. Sir Michael's voice was calm and measured as he introduced himself. The significance of receiving a call from such a senior palace official was not lost on Marcus, who immediately became attentive and concerned. Sir Michael explained that he was calling regarding the treatment of one of the royal guard the previous evening, and he wanted to discuss the incident personally. Marcus initially tried to downplay the situation, suggesting it might have been a simple misunderstanding with the reservation system. However, Sir Michael had obtained a detailed account of the evening's events, including the manager's inappropriate comments about James and Sarah being directed to establishments that catered to people of their background. The conversation that followed was diplomatic but firm. Sir Michael explained that James Mitchell was not simply a palace employee, but a decorated guard who had dedicated his life to serving the crown. The disrespect shown to him and his wife was unacceptable and reflected poorly on the restaurant's values and management practices. Marcus began to realize the gravity of his staff's mistake. Le Petit Château had built its reputation partly on its association with royalty and high society. The restaurant's walls were decorated with photographs of celebrity diners and royal family members who had visited over the years. To learn that his staff had turned away someone who worked directly for the palace was mortifying. Sir Michael's next words would change everything for the restaurant. He explained that the palace was prepared to take further action to address this matter, but first wanted to give Marcus an opportunity to make things right. The solution he proposed was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. The conversation ended with Marcus agreeing to Sir Michael's request immediately. He understood that refusing would likely result in consequences far beyond losing the palace's goodwill. The royal household's influence extended throughout London's hospitality industry, and word of their displeasure could destroy a restaurant's reputation overnight. As Marcus hung up the phone, his hands were shaking. He immediately called an emergency staff meeting and began making arrangements for what would become one of the most memorable evenings in Le Petit Château's history. Meanwhile, James continued his duties at the palace, unaware that his anniversary dinner was about to become an event that would be talked about for years to come. That afternoon, James received an unexpected message through official channels. Colonel Hampton requested his presence in the administrative offices immediately after his shift ended. James wondered if this was related to the restaurant incident, but the formal nature of the summons made him slightly nervous. In his 12 years of service, he had rarely been called to meetings without knowing the purpose. When James arrived at Colonel Hampton's office, he was surprised to find Sir Michael Stevens waiting alongside his commanding officer. The presence of such a senior palace official was extraordinary, and James immediately stood at attention, uncertain about what was happening. Sir Michael gestured for him to sit and explained that they had discussed the previous evening's incident. James felt uncomfortable knowing that his personal problems had reached such high levels within the palace hierarchy. He began to apologize for bringing outside matters into his professional life, but Sir Michael raised a hand to stop him. The senior official explained that this was not about James seeking special treatment, but about ensuring that those who serve the crown were treated with appropriate respect by the public. Sir Michael then outlined a plan that left James speechless. The palace had arranged for James and Sarah to return to Le Petit Château the following evening, but this time under very different circumstances. The restaurant owner had personally invited them to dine as guests of the establishment, with all costs covered and a formal apology from management. However, the evening would include an additional element that would make it truly unforgettable. Sir Michael explained that a member of the royal family would be dining at the restaurant at the same time, and James would be introduced as one of the palace's most dedicated servants. The message to the restaurant staff and other patrons would be unmistakable. This was a man who deserved their highest respect. James was overwhelmed by the gesture. He had never expected his complaint to result in such extraordinary measures. He tried to protest that this level of intervention was unnecessary, but Colonel Hampton explained that it was about more than just James and Sarah. It was about establishing a precedent and ensuring that all palace staff were treated with dignity when representing the crown in public. The practical arrangements were impressive in their detail. James and Sarah would be collected by a palace car and driven to the restaurant. They would be seated at the best table in the house, and the chef would personally prepare a special menu for their anniversary celebration. Most remarkably, They would be joined for dessert by Prince Edward, who had volunteered to participate. When he learned of the situation, James worried about Sarah's reaction to such an elaborate evening. She was a private person who preferred quiet celebrations, and the thought of dining with royalty while being watched by other patrons might make her uncomfortable. Sir Michael assured him that the evening would be handled with discretion, and that Sarah's comfort would be the primary consideration. The restaurant owner, Marcus Whitfield, had spent the day in a state of panic and preparation. After his conversation with Sir Michael, he had immediately fired the manager responsible for the previous evening's incident. He had also called an emergency meeting with all staff to discuss proper treatment of guests and the importance of respect for everyone who entered their establishment. Marcus personally reviewed every detail of James and Sarah's upcoming dinner. He selected the finest ingredients, planned a menu that would showcase the restaurant's best dishes, and ensured that every member of staff understood the significance of the evening. The sommelier was instructed to pair each course with exceptional wines, and the service team was briefed on providing flawless hospitality. The irony was not lost on Marcus. The couple he had refused the night before would now be dining as honored guests alongside royalty. The story would undoubtedly spread throughout London's hospitality industry, serving as a powerful reminder about the importance of treating every guest with respect, regardless of their perceived social status. As James prepared to leave the palace that evening, he reflected on the extraordinary turn of events. In less than 24 hours, a disappointing anniversary dinner had become an unprecedented celebration that would create memories to last a lifetime. James arrived home that evening with news that left Sarah stunned. When he explained that they would be returning to Le Petit Chateau as honored guests, dining alongside a member of the royal family, she initially thought he was joking. The idea seemed so far-fetched that it took several minutes for the reality to sink in. Sarah had always been proud of her husband's service, but she had never imagined it would lead to such an extraordinary experience. The next day, Sarah spent hours preparing for what would certainly be the most memorable evening of her life. She had never met royalty before, and the thought of making conversation with Prince Edward while trying to enjoy dinner was both thrilling and terrifying. James helped her choose the perfect outfit, a sophisticated black dress that was elegant, but not overly formal, paired with the pearl necklace he had given her for their 5th anniversary. Meanwhile, at Le Petit Chateau, the atmosphere was electric with nervous energy. Marcus Whitfield had barely slept, knowing that his restaurant's reputation hung in the balance. Every detail had been checked and double-checked. The table selected for James and Sarah was positioned perfectly, visible enough to send a clear message to other diners, but private enough to allow for comfortable conversation. The staff had been thoroughly briefed on the evening's significance. The same doorman who had turned James away 2 nights earlier was notably absent, having been quietly reassigned to other duties. In his place stood the restaurant's most experienced and diplomatic host, prepared to welcome the couple with the highest level of respect and courtesy. As evening approached, a gleaming black palace car arrived at James and Sarah's modest home. The driver, wearing full livery, greeted them with warm professionalism and helped Sarah into the vehicle with careful attention. As they drove through London's streets toward Mayfair, Sarah gripped James's hand tightly, still hardly believing what was happening. The arrival at Le Petit Chateau was a complete contrast to their experience 2 days earlier. Marcus Whitfield himself stood at the entrance, flanked by senior staff members, ready to personally welcome his guests. The transformation in attitude was remarkable. Where there had been condescension and dismissal, there was now genuine warmth and deep respect. Marcus's apology was heartfelt and specific. He acknowledged the inappropriate treatment they had received and took personal responsibility for his staff's behavior. He explained that the incident had prompted a complete review of the restaurant's policies and training procedures to ensure such treatment would never happen again. James and Sarah were escorted to their table with ceremony befitting VIP guests. Other diners watched with curiosity, sensing that something significant was taking place but unable to identify the couple who were receiving such extraordinary attention. The table itself was magnificent, set with the restaurant's finest china, crystal glasses and silver cutlery that gleamed under the soft lighting. The menu prepared for their evening was a masterpiece of culinary artistry. Marcus had personally selected each dish to create a progression of flavors that would showcase the restaurant's capabilities while honoring the significance of their anniversary celebration. The first course arrived with impeccable timing, presented by the head waiter with explanations of each ingredient and preparation method. As they dined, James and Sarah gradually relaxed into the experience. The quality of the food was exceptional, and the service was flawless in every detail. However, the most remarkable moment was yet to come. As they finished their main course, there was a subtle stir of activity near the restaurant's entrance that signaled the arrival of their royal dining companion. Prince Edward entered quietly, accompanied by minimal security, and was discreetly guided to their table. His approach was warm and informal, immediately putting the couple at ease. He congratulated them on their anniversary and thanked James for his years of dedicated service to the crown. The conversation that followed was natural and engaging, with Prince Edward showing genuine interest in their lives and experiences. The dessert course became a celebration that exceeded every expectation, transforming what had begun as a disappointing evening into a triumphant vindication of dignity and respect. The final course of the evening was presented with a flourish that surprised even Prince Edward. Marcus Whitfield had commissioned a special dessert for the occasion, an elegant anniversary cake decorated with edible gold leaf and accompanied by champagne that had been aging in the restaurant's cellar for over a decade. The presentation was accompanied by the entire kitchen staff, who emerged to offer their personal congratulations to the couple. Prince Edward raised his champagne glass in a toast that resonated throughout the dining room. He spoke about the importance of recognizing those who serve others and the dignity that every person deserves regardless of their background or occupation. His words were clearly audible to other diners, ensuring that everyone present understood the significance of James and Sarah's presence at the restaurant. The conversation continued for another hour, with Prince Edward sharing stories from his own experiences and asking thoughtful questions about James's career and Sarah's work as a teacher. The royal's genuine interest and down-to-earth manner made the evening feel less like a formal obligation and more like dinner with an interesting new friend who happened to be royalty. As the evening drew to a close, Marcus Whitfield approached the table with a final gesture that would complete the transformation of this story. He presented James and Sarah with a beautifully engraved invitation for a complimentary dinner at Le Petit Chateau every year on their anniversary, for as long as the restaurant remained in business. The gesture was both generous and symbolic, representing a permanent acknowledgement of the respect they deserved. Prince Edward's departure was as gracious as his arrival. He thanked James again for his service, wished the couple many more happy anniversaries, and made a point of shaking hands with Marcus and complimenting him on the exceptional evening. The message to everyone present was clear. This was how people should be treated regardless of their background or social status. The ride home in the palace car was filled with quiet amazement. Sarah held James's hand as they processed the incredible turn of events. What had begun as humiliation and disappointment had become a celebration that exceeded their wildest dreams. More importantly, it had become a powerful statement about dignity, respect, and the value of those who dedicate their lives to serving others. News of the evening spread quickly through London's hospitality industry, though the details were kept respectfully vague to protect James and Sarah's privacy. However, the story became legendary among restaurant staff and management, serving as a powerful reminder about the importance of treating every guest with courtesy and respect. Le Petit Chateau experienced an immediate transformation in its reputation. Rather than being damaged by the incident, the restaurant gained widespread respect for how Marcus had handled the situation and made amends. The story became a testament to the power of accountability and the importance of second chances when genuine effort is made to correct mistakes. James returned to his duties at Buckingham Palace with a new perspective on his role and its significance. The incident had reinforced his pride in his service and demonstrated that his dedication was recognized and valued at the highest levels. His fellow guards heard the story with a mixture of amazement and pride, knowing that one of their own had been honored in such an extraordinary way. The anniversary dinner at Le Petit Chateau became an annual tradition that James and Sarah treasured. Each year they were welcomed back with warmth and genuine respect, and Marcus always made sure their evening was special. The restaurant had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of looking beyond appearances and treating every person with dignity. Years later, when James retired from the palace after 25 years of distinguished service, the story of that remarkable anniversary dinner was still being told. It had become more than just a personal triumph. It was a powerful reminder that respect and dignity should be universal values, and that sometimes the most ordinary people are capable of the most extraordinary service to others.